Friendly hello and welcome to Mastering PHPStorm. My name is Christoph Rumpel and I will be your guide on our journey to become faster and more efficient while using our favorite IDE. This course on the one side is for PHPStorm newcomers who need a little bit of help setting everything up, guide them through the tremendous amount of features in PHPStorm, but also show them how to make this IDE look clean and beautiful. But on the other side, this course is also for more advanced PHPStorm users who already have their setup but are looking for these little tips and tricks that can help them to improve their setup even further. Or maybe they're just looking for a specific topic like refactoring, testing, Git, and so on. So I hope you're ready. I am. Make yourself comfortable and let's get it started. This is what PHPStorm looks like the first time you open it up or when you restore the default settings. And let's be honest, it does not look like a place that I would enjoy working in. And I would go even further and say it's pretty ugly. I'm sorry PHPStorm, but yeah, we have to start this relationship on honesty. So the UI is bloated with all kinds of tool windows here on the left, here also at the bottom. Then we also have lots of other information here at the bottom and also here on the right, some browser icons, some magnifier effect here, some more features up here. So yeah, it's cool. PHPStorm has a lot to offer, but we definitely do not need to see all of them all the time. So that's why we have to customize it to make it beautiful. And this is what we're going to do in the next video. But still in this video, I want to show you how PHPStorm and the design of it is set up in general. First, it's important to note that a theme you know from other editors is a little bit different in PHPStorm. So the theme here we have is one of the default themes that comes with PHPStorm. And it's responsible for the overall look of the UI. And what I mean by that is like these settings here, some sidebars, toolbars, everything that is not your editor. The editor then itself is being defined by the editor color scheme. And here everything is about the font of the editor, the color of the editor, and some other settings. So this means in PHPStorm we need a theme and a color scheme in order to change most of the UI, and this is being done in PHPStorm with a plugin. So if you need a new theme, you're going to install a new plugin. So this means if you're a fan of this famous material theme, you can install it in PHPStorm through a plugin, and it will come with a theme to change the overall UI, and it will also come with a color scheme to change the editor. So what I would recommend is to check all the given themes and then maybe install it, or in the next video we're going to install my custom theme. Alright, are you ready for a beautiful setup? I know you are. So this is our goal for today's video, to make the IDE look that beautiful. So as we learned in the last thing, the best way to change the overall IDE is through a theme. And the theme in PHPStorm is a plugin. So if you search on the marketplace for a theme, you will find a lot of beautiful themes. For example, the famous material theme UI. But what we want to use is a custom theme called Rios that I created just for you and me. So you can install it by going to the settings and then install the plugin from disk. And then select the Rios jar file which you received when you bought this course. And apply it, and we should immediately see some changes end with you. Everything is light now because this theme comes with a light and a dark version. I'm sorry guys, but I'm going to switch to the dark one here. And let's apply it. Alright, much better. And as I mentioned before, a plugin theme always comes with a theme to adapt the overall UI, but also then an editor color scheme which is responsible for the editor itself. And we also have here a light and a dark one. And as you can see, our editor already looks much better with a bigger font, some bigger line height, and yeah, overall more cleaned up. But as you can see, we're not there yet. There are still a lot of things around our editor going on, and we need to get rid of them in order to focus on what's most important, and that's the editor for sure. So most of these bars around our editor we can change through the global search. Let's start with the tool window bars, which is responsible for showing all the tool windows around our editor. And we can easily switch it off through the global search, which is pretty cool, by the way. Next, we have tabs, which I usually don't use, so we can just get rid of them too by saying we want the tab placement to be none. All right, they are gone too. Then we also have the navigation bar now at the top. And now this is gone too, which is also nice because also all the tools on the right for running and debug situations we don't see now anymore. Okay, what's next? We have this status bar at the bottom, which has a lot of information, but yeah, as always, this information is not what we need all the time, so I also like to get rid of that. And last we have the breadcrumbs, and here we can delete them for the current editor, but we want to do this for all, so that's why we need to remove this here and pick don't show. Okay, wow, this is now very different from what we have seen before. So this looks super clean now. Now that I've seen, we also have here now this browser pop-ups. So let's try to get rid of them too. And this is something that we need to do in the main settings. And here, let's remove this. And yeah, now they are gone too. But yeah, as I mentioned before, we are getting there. So it looks much, much more clean and we're not distracted by all these other features around. But still a few things that I like to tweak here. Okay, so next I want to get rid of these code folding icons. This is useful, but we can do the same with a shortcut. So that's why I like to get rid of this from our UI. Let's bring back our settings and search for code folding. And here we have it, editor general code folding, show code folding outline, and we disable that. Okay, one more thing and a little bit more clean. Then I'm not sure if you have seen it, but we have these lines here and here. And they are called, I think it was method separator. Yeah, and they are already disabled, but I know that I think it's a little bug. And we need to disable the color as well. So here we have it on the color scheme general method separator color. If we remove this color here, you can see that they will remove here too. Yeah, so much better already. So what I like to keep are the line numbers and those vertical lines here, which help me to see, the vertical structure of things. So this already looks very good. So let's also check out the view file now. So we're now inside a view file. And if we go a little bit deeper here, you can see that we get this highlighted gutter here on the left. And that's called a tag tree. And it just provides you with different colors depending on in which tag you currently are. And yeah, it's beautiful, but it's not useful to me, so I like to get rid of this as well. And this can also be done through the settings. And it's called a tag tree. General appearance, here we can disable it, apply it, and perfect. And then here on the right, you see this little highlights here saying that there are some errors, and I like to see the errors up here, but I don't like to see them here on the scroll bar. And by the way, here's also something that we've seen before, this lens here showing like a bigger version of the code at this position of the scroll bar. And I always found this distracting. So maybe let's start with this. This is called code lens. show code lens on scroll bar. And here we have this. So it's always good if you can search for it in this global search here or on the search of the setting itself. And this always helps you to find the right feature that you want to check. Okay, the code lens is now gone. Let's talk about these indicators here. So they're indicating some errors, but as I'm seeing them already here in the summary, I don't need them here at the scroll bar. So these are called stripe marks, and under color scheme general, you will find errors and warnings. And for warnings, we can see that here we have this color for the stripe mark. And we can remove this now. And sometimes you need to restart your IDE, but yeah, now they are gone here and everything looks much better. And back in our PHP class, here I think this already looks so much better than before. And I think we did a great job here already. There is still a little bit more that we want to do, but we're going to do that in the next video. So from the editor point of view, we are already pretty good, but yeah, we're still not there yet. There are still a few things that we need to tweak. So for example, if I open up any of the settings or a sidebar, you can see that the font and the font size of those things here does not really match the sizes we have here. So let's go back to our settings, appearance, and here we have this default theme or UI font, which you cannot adapt or change with the theme. So that's why we have to do this manually. So normally I would go for something like 18, but since I'm using a different resolution, it would look very big for you. So that's why I go for maybe like 16 for now. Let's give it a try. Yeah, it still looks a little bit big for me, but I think it's only because of the lower resolution that I use for recording those videos. Apply it, try it out now on the sidebar. Yeah, so I think this already fits much better. Next, since we already have one of those windows here open on the left, what I like to do now is bringing them to the right side. So move them to the right top, and yeah, please be patient with me. So the first time you see it, it might look a little bit strange to you, and it did for me too. I first encountered this at the setup of Caleb Porcio, and it felt really strange seeing it on the right side, but he had one explanation that really clicked for me. So the thing is, if you have it on the left side, let's bring it back to the left. And if we now open and close it, all of your code will switch to the right, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a lot of distraction when you think about it. So if I change this now to the right side, and now bring this up, you can see the code stays where it is. And this means we have much less distraction. And when you think about how much you will do this every day, it is a big thing. And that's why I now always recommend to have all those windows on the right side. There is no option to have all of them on the right side. You have to do this once for every of those windows. But yeah, it's not too much of an effort. Cool, so next and last little tweak for this video is about icons. So in PHPStorm we have icons everywhere and they're okay, but yeah, we can do better. If we go to the marketplace and search for Atom, we'll find those icons of the Atom theme, and we can install them too. So we need to accept this, apply it, and click OK. And if we open up, for example, now the sidebar, you can see we have a lot of new icons. So example, different icons for all those different folders, which I find really cool and really beautiful. And the same goes, for example, for a test class. You can see here that we now get these new icons here saying that this is a test, and if we click it, we could run it. And we will find all of those new icons everywhere in the editor and the IDE, and I think they are pretty cool. That's why I also recommend switching them too. Okay, we're almost finished. Just one more thing. I promise that's the last thing here. So if I click the class, for example, we can see here some little indicators or different structures of our class. And yeah, I also like it. You already know it much more without them. So we can change this inside the settings, editor, general, and down here, highlight modified lines in the gutter. We don't need this. Apply it, and they are gone. And that's it. This is how I like my IDE. Super simple, clean, but still beautiful. I like to have my windows on the right. And yeah, everything is done so that we can focus on the most important thing, and that's always the code itself. And I can promise it will feel much more comfortable in such an IDE if you use it every day. Okay, so here's the thing. It just turned out I've been recording my whole course with a custom paid font that you can't use, and I didn't mention it. So I'm sorry for this, and I'm going to give you a little update here in this video. So first, the font that I'm using in all my videos is called Operator Mono. And it's a font that you have to pay for. It costs something like $200, so it's not cheap, but it's the font of my choice. I've been using it for years now, and I really love how it looks like. So you have this little like italic handwritten style of things also here, like the type of my title. So I really enjoy working with this font. But of course, I know that not everyone is capable of buying this font and spending so much money on a font. And that's fair too. So I want to give you, also some alternatives to the font that I'm using. Okay, so the second font of my choice is called Fira Code. And I always go with this light option here. Let's apply it and take a look. Yeah, as you can see, it also looks really nice. So I also enjoy working with this font. I've been using it for also a long time before I've been using the Operator Mono font. And I think it's a really good font too. And the good thing with this font also is that you get those ligatures. And with ligatures, we mean when two characters are now being shown with this one symbol. So for example, these should be, I think, two or three equal signs. I'm not sure right now. Or this is a not equals, and this is a bigger or equal. And yeah, if you write those characters, they will be transferred into this one symbol. Let me show this to you. Two equal signs, three equal signs, bigger equals, and as you can see, you get those nice symbols now, which I really like and I think is really cool about this font. Then also another font that I like to use is called JetPrints Mono, and this font is actually by JetPrints itself. So as you can see, it also comes with these ligatures, and you can also enable and disable them for every font that you're using. So this font is now a little bit more coding technology, a little bit more rough, I would say, but also it's also quite nice rounded every character. So yeah, it's also a nice font that you can use as well, and which is also for free, so you can easily download this as well. So yeah, I would give this a try too. Okay, and let me also show you the font that I've been using was called Operator Mono. And here you can see this nice little italic and handwritten styles that I like a lot. And yeah, it's the basic cost $200, so it's not cheap. So the second font that I was showing you was called Fira Code, and you can get it for free if you search for this repository. And here you can see a lot of the features like the ligatures that I've been showing you, and how to install it. So give this a try too. I really love this font as well. Then here we have the JetPrints Mono font. And by the way, you've been seeing this mono for a lot of fonts. And what this just means is that every character in the font has the same width. And this is especially nice while coding so that everything lines up really nice together. So this is what I will always look for in a font that I'm using for coding. So yeah, this is the JetPrince Mono font. Here you can see a lot of the features. What does it look like? Also a lot of the features here of the font itself, some stats here. So they also have a pretty cool site for this font. So I would give this a look as well. And here is another font called Mona Lisa, which also has a really nice website. And it also shows you a lot of features that it comes with. Some people recommended this font to me, so I haven't been using this myself, but I really like the look of it, so I think I would check this out as well. There's also a little playground where you can see what it looks like. Here for PHP, yeah, pretty nice. So give this a look as well. For this one, you have to buy it for 60 euros, which is the personal package, and you get some more features with the other ones. But yeah, I think fonts are really important, so I like to invest in my workflow, and that's also why I bought a font. But of course, check out the free ones as well. And I have one more here called Dunk Mono, which is also a font some people recommended to me. I haven't been using this myself. It's also a typeface designed for coding and aesthetics, and this one is pretty cheap for 24. Is it pounds? I think so. So yeah, these are the fonts that I would recommend. So there are some nice free fonts, but also some paid fonts. So give this a look and yeah, find a font that you enjoy reading. We have already installed my custom theme Rios and the atom material icons. But still there are a few more plugins that I would recommend for every new installation of PHPStorm. First up is the Presentation Assistant. Install it, and I think we can immediately apply it. So every time now I use a shortcut, you will see it at the bottom, and it will tell you the name of the shortcut which I was using, the name of the feature, but also the shortcut and the combination of the keys for Mac, Windows, and Linux. And that's not only cool for yourself, but also if you have any kind of presentation, people are watching you, they can see the shortcuts that you're using. So I use it all the time for streaming or talks that I do about PHPStorm or just about coding. Also good to know you can adapt this a little bit. Let's search for Presentation Assistant, and here under Appearance, we can change which key map we're going to use. So for example, if you add a custom key map, you can change it here, and then the shortcut of this custom key map is being shown. So that's pretty useful. And then also under Editor Color Scheme, we can change the foreground and the background color of it, which is also pretty nice. Another plugin that I also always recommend is called Environment File Support. And what this does, it just brings syntax highlighting to your environment files. And since nowadays mostly all applications use those environment files, it makes sense to use this. And inside an environment file like this, you can see now that we have syntax highlighting. And if we use the go to declaration shortcut, you can see that this now works for environment variables too. We can see where they are being used, and we can also go the other way around to see where they have been defined. So that's something that I use every time. It's just a little plugin, but it's very useful. Also, a plugin that I use all the time is called PHP Inspections EA Extended. So this is a static code analyzer which helps you with more inspections. So PHPStorm by itself is already a code analyzer, and it helps you to find some errors and tells you about what you could do better. And this plugin provides even more of those inspections and also solutions. Install it. This time we need to restart our IDE. Back after restarting, you can see that it has been now enabled. And here's already an example where I can show you what it can do. So if I open up the context actions here, we can see that there are a few things that we can do. And one of those solutions here is this one, Split the Workflow, which is a solution that comes from this new plugin, PHP Inspections. And that's, by the way, my favorite solution for an if-else statement. Get rid of the else as well. So this is just a little preview of what this plugin can do. There's much more. If you're a friend of those inspections in PHPStorm, give this a look. I can only recommend it. And last on my favorite plugins list is one specific for Laravel. So this only is helpful if you're using Laravel yourself. So I have already installed it because you have to purchase this one. So this one is not for free, but I still would highly recommend it if you use Laravel. So it adds a lot of auto-completion features that you normally wouldn't get with Laravel because sometimes your IDE does not understand what's happening inside of Laravel. But there is much more. It provides some auto-completion for validation rules, for specific routes. For example, here it now knows that there is this welcome route that I have defined. And also what I really like is this Laravel code generation prompt here, where I can easily create a new controller, or maybe a feature or unit test, or maybe a few. So that's cool. Or if I create a controller, I can also say that it should be a single action controller, which will already give me an invocable method. So there are a lot of these little things that are super helpful if you're developing with Laravel. So give it a try. I can really recommend this one. Okay, perfect. So these are my go-to plugins for every fresh installation of PHPStorm. Of course, there are much more that you might need depending on your workflow, on your application, but that's what I would go for every time. Now that we have this beautiful, clean version of PHPStorm, we have one problem. How do we open up all these little windows, toolbars, and everything that we need, but that we don't see now anymore? Yeah, and I'm sorry for that, because this now has become a little bit more difficult. But when I think about it, actually, I'm not sorry at all, because you will learn all those shortcuts now much faster. Being productive in an IDE like PHPStorm, it's all about the right shortcuts. Clicking with your mouse is always slow, and since we do work a lot in an IDE, every action that we can take a little bit faster is a big win in the long run. In PHPStorm, you will find all shortcuts under key map. And here you can find every shortcut. For example, for terminal, just look for it and you can see, okay, here's the terminal shortcut and here is the shortcut how you can open it up. Then you can click it, add a new one, or remove one of the given ones. So that's pretty cool, because you can customize almost all of the shortcuts in PHPStorm right here, and you can also easily search for one. Also good to mention here is you can search by just clicking the shortcut here, and then you can see if there is already a shortcut given for this combination of keys. I've been tweaking my shortcuts for years now, and I think it's time to share them with you too. Okay, so in general, use the cheat sheet to take a look at all of the shortcuts that I use most of my time. They are also grouped, so I think it's easy to find the one that you need. But I also wanted to add a few things here. So first, for example, there are a few shortcuts that I did not change. So for example, Command and 1. So that's the one that, I think most editors use to open up the sidebar, and I didn't want to change that, because a lot of people already know it and use it, and I don't think they have to change, and I also didn't want to change this myself. By the way, I mostly refer to the Mac shortcut, Mac key combination, but whenever I type any shortcut, you see it for Windows and Linux as well. Then also one that I did not change is the global search. It's Shift, just type it together and it will open up this global search, and here you can easily search for specific actions and going through them with tab. And yeah, this is also one that I really like and I didn't want to change. And then we also have the settings, which you open up with Command and Comma. And yeah, also one that is used in a lot of different applications. So I also wanted to keep this one. Then regarding opening some of the other tool windows next to the sidebar, I always use the Alt key and then the first letter of what I want to do. So for example, Alt and C opens up the console for me. So I like to go with console instead of terminal. Then in combination with V, I'm going to open up the version control operation where I mostly use commit and yeah, maybe some of those other features, branches as well. For branches, I also have one with B, which opens up my branches dialog as well. So that's how I like to keep my windows and dialogues together with Alt and then one of those settings. And I think I also have Alt and R, which opens up run window, which by the way, a lot of people do not use, but as you're going through my course, you will see how helpful this run window will be in the end for you. Then for closing any of the toolbars, I'm using a shortcut for closing all active windows. And that's pretty cool because if I have open 2 of those windows, I can just use this one shortcut and then all of them are removed, which is pretty much easier than if you have to do this by yourself. Then also for navigation, I already mentioned the double shift, which is the default shortcut for search. But I also have those specific searches on Command P, O, I, and U. So these are all keys next to each other. And this way I can easily switch between those specific searches, which I highly recommend because you become much faster while searching and will receive better results. So that's why I like to have those keys and shortcuts all next to each other. And then also regarding navigation, I really like this structure shortcut, which is Alt and S. Alt for another prompt dialog or window, and then S for structure, and also Alt and D. For example, let's try this here for go to declaration, which you can use with command and click as well. But if there is a shortcut, you should always use it. Of course, when using shortcuts, there will be a few that are not so easy to remember because we are limited with the shortcuts that we can use, and the command and key ones are the easier ones, and there will be some a little bit more difficult, but with time you will get adapted to them as well. Your whole IDE is kind of a living system, and if you encounter something that you don't like or that does not work for you, just change it. PHPStorm lets you change almost everything, and this way you can adapt it to your personal needs and you will become more efficient while using it. And this is the goal that we have with the shortcuts, to become more efficient, become faster, and just become better working with our IDE. Since we are spending a lot of time tweaking our IDE, it makes sense to share or let's say save our settings. And there are a few ways in PHPStorm what we can do about this. So there are 3 options. We can sync all of our settings with our JetBrains account. So if you have one, and you might have one if you have PHPStorm, then you can just sync it and it will be synced automatically in the bank. If you like to share your settings maybe with some teammates, it makes sense to use a settings repository. So you can create a Git repository, for example, and then connect it to your PHPStorm, and then you can just sync those settings via your repository. And the cool thing about this is you also see the commits and see what things has changed. And this is something that might be useful, that you can see, okay, this was changed through this command or this file, for example. And then of course we can also just export and import settings, like where you just export a zip file. Let's give this a look. Inside PHPStorm, manage IDE settings. So here you can see, for example, that's the last one that I was talking about. We can export some specific settings. And here I can just click the things that I need, like my key map. So this is how I exported my key map shortcuts, for example, or maybe just some updates, UI settings, whatever. You can just easily export it and import it somewhere else. Then something else I mentioned was setting up a repository and syncing it with a repository, which is helpful if you have other teammates who should use the same. And here's also the option where we could sync it to our JetBrains account, or maybe you need to restore it to the default settings. So that's what I did in front of my videos for this course. Always be careful about what option you choose, because here's a long list of things that are being included. And you have to be aware that some of the settings are maybe not included in this sync and sharing option. So what I currently do is I use the sync option with my JetBrains account, and I also like to keep some exporting of my settings somewhere on Dropbox just to be sure I really have them in case anything happens with my JetBrains account. In the end, it's just important that you really make sure that you have saved your settings somewhere, because you never know if your machine breaks or something like that and all your settings are gone. This is not something that we want. So make sure to choose at least one of those options. Let's talk about refactoring. So refactoring is the process of changing your code without changing the outcome or the result. So anyone using your application, a user, won't see a difference like a new feature. And that's a good thing, because with refactoring, we aim for something else. We aim for specific changes in the implementation of our code. So this could be about making our code more simple, make it more better to read, or make it better maintainable. And there are a lot of different reasons. Today I want to refactor this class of mine called PostFactory. And it's a class that I'm using on my own blog for creating dummy files, because all my blog posts are Markdown files, and in order to test the behavior of my blog, I need to have those dummy files in place. And as you can see, we can create a new dummy file or multiple ones, and then inside my test I can easily make use of it, like here creating a new post Markdown file. The goal for today is to make this class a little bit more simple and better to read. Before we can start, I want to make sure that everything is working, and that's why I'm running my tests now. And as you can see, all my tests are passing, and this is the perfect start for refactoring, because we know that our code behaves like we want it to do, and that's the best way to start changing your code. And after our changes, we're going to make sure that our tests are still passing. First, when refactoring, I always check names. Class names, method names, variable names. They are super important because they tell others what is happening. And if you come back 1 week from now, it's important to you to understand what's happening here. This is even more crucial when you're like me, trying not to write a lot of comments, because the less comments you have, the less code and text people have to read. So what pops up first to me here is this PostFactory class name. In all my other projects, I use a singular approach. So this means this would be PostFactory. So it's always important to keep your code consistent, because this makes it much easier and you have to think less, which is good. Of course, we could just try to rename it here, for example, but we will run into a few errors, and we can easily see that by running our tests. Of course, they are failing now because this class PostFactory is still being used somewhere else. So this is why we don't want to do this, but of course PHPStorm is here to help us. And we're going to use the refactor this dialog a lot in the next videos. So it provides a lot of refactoring features here, and the one that we're interested in right now is rename. So let's just rename it to PostFactory. And PHPStorm is also telling us that it will rename the file too, and this is what we want. Alright, so we have now changed it, and as you can see, it was also changed inside our test here. where do we have it? Here, post factory. So it's being used this new name now automatically. And to make sure that everything is working, again, we're going to run our tests and they are still passing. And this way I can make sure that everything is still working out as we want it to be. Okay, what's next here? So I've already seen before, later here, we have a replace dummy content. This is where we replace the dummy content of our markdown files with specific text. And here I'm passing in a path variable. But later down here, you can see we're using the path here where we put the new file. And this is normally where we provide the name and not the path. And this seems like a small change, but these are really important to make your code better readable for everybody. So what I want to do now is I want to rename this here. So let's bring up our refactoring dialog and rename it again to, let's call it file name. That's what we really have here. And again, let's make sure that everything is working out, and it does. All right, so I'm satisfied now with the names and I think we can move on. Connected to naming are also namespaces. Like here, because they define the name, the directory, and the overall structure of your code. Right now my files can be found under database factories. But when I think about it, those factories, I only will need them for my test. So what I want to do is I want to have them inside my tests directory here. And again, PHPStorm can help us here. So let's bring back our refactoring features, and here we can move our namespace. And we just have to change the name from database to tests. And let's check this out here. Under tests, I have new my factories directory, and here I have my factory files, and also the namespace has been changed. That's easy how it is when you use PHPStorm for such features. And one more time. Our tests are passing and we are ready to move on. What I also noticed while going through this class here is this part where we are creating the file name. And we're using the title here, we slug it, and we also use the date. And in the end, we will end up with a file name like 2012, 1212, and then my first article, and it will be a markdown file. So this is what we're creating here. And when you think about it, this public create method is probably a place where other developers or you will come in later again. Yeah, because it's a public method, you maybe need to check out how it's working. And when you go here, it's a first place that people will probably look at this class. And that's why it's very important to think about how much lines of code those users have to read. Even though it's just those 2 or 3 lines, I think it's important to extract it to a method, because it will tell the user immediately what's happening is with the name of the method. So what we can do in PHPStorm is selecting those 2 lines. We are bringing back our refactoring features, and now we want to extract the method. And here we can give it a name, so it's very important to give it a good name. We build the file name. That's what we're doing here. I don't want the doc block. Here we have our parameters, the title and date, and let's do this. And yeah, boom, PHPStorm also found the same code being used somewhere else and asks us if we want to replace it there too. So that's pretty amazing when you think about it. If we click yes, we see it now here in the file name method, and here those 2 lines, we can replace them here too. And that's pretty amazing because PHPStorm is smart enough to find those duplicated code samples and can replace them too. So we're using it here now and up here in our create method. And yeah, when we think about the date, that's also a very simple line. What we also can do here is inline it automatically. So we have this 1 line of code here, and now for everyone coming to this method, it's very easy to see we're building here the file name, but we don't care how it's built. If we care about this, then we can easily go to this method here, and then we're going to see it here. When working with a class like a factory, you will easily end up with very similar factories. So for example, there will also be one for my talks and maybe one for a different kind of models where I create Markdown files. And this is when we have to think about similarities between those files and how we can extract them. So in our case, when we think about, we have this new method, and I already know that all my factories, they will have this new method because we're just returning a new instance so that we can easily chain all those different methods here. So in this case, it makes sense to use a base class, and you might have already seen that we have one here in our factories directory, and it is just an empty class for now. So let's extend our post factory and let's use this base factory here. And what we can do now is we can tell PHPStorm that we want to move this method here to this base factory class. Of course, we can copy it, but since there's already a feature, it makes sense to use it. So let's bring back our refactoring feature and let's look for pull members up. So the member of the class is the method and we want to pull it up to the parent class. So that's what we're doing here. And PHPStorm already knows that we want to pull it up to the base factory. And here we can define different properties or method that we also want to use there. But for now, we are fine with the new method. Here we go. Boom, our method is gone. And if we go to the base factory, you can now see that it has been placed in here. But as you see, we're not finished yet. PHPStorm is complaining because we're returning here the post factory. But when we think about it, this could be a post factory, this could be a talk factory, so it could be something else. So in this case, since PHP 8, we can use the static type. And now PHPStorm is happy and we are happy too. As always, in the end, we want to make sure that everything is still passing. Let's run our test, and if we see something green, we are good. We are, and this means we are ready to move on. In the last video, we refactored our code to use a base class. But when we take a look at the other method that we have, like the create method or the create multiple method, those are probably also methods that other factories will use. But still, the implementation will be different, and maybe also the return type and the attributes. So this is when you're not able to use the base class for something like this. But this is when it makes sense to use an interface, because with every factory, we want to make sure that those methods are provided. All right, so let's introduce an interface to this class, and that's very easy. We go to our class, we bring up our refactoring features, and we're going to extract an interface. Let's give it a name. So I think I will call it factory interface. I like to have the interface in the name, so that is easier to see it. And here we can now select the methods that we want to use. So create and create multiple are ones that I'm sure of that it will need in every factory. So let's keep just those. Okay, let's refactor this. And here we have our new factory interface with those two methods, create and create multiple. And the good thing now is if we're now going to create a new class, so let's do this real quick. So maybe for our talk factory, we can now easily extend the base factory that we have created. And what we also can do is we can search for our factory interface here and now implement this as well. And that's pretty cool because now we also get here our two methods that we need to make sure of that those are provided. And that's what I like about using an interface in PHPStorm, that PHPStorm helps you a lot by already creating this for you and making sure that we have those methods included. Let's talk about testing. I hope you all write tests because you really should. It will help you to sleep better at night, knowing that your application will behave as expected. And then especially if you're going to change some code, if you're going to refactor your code, it will be a lifesaver having those tests around. PHPStorm has some nice built-in testing features that we want to take a look now. We will be using PHP Unit because that's the most used PHP testing framework. So let's see what PHPStorm has to offer us here. There is one step we need to take in order to use PHPStorm testing feature. So this means we have to set it up. But don't worry, I found the easiest solution to set it up in PHPStorm. The first thing you need to do is select your command line PHP interpreter. So if we go to your setting, PHP, here we can define it. And I'm using my local PHP installation and I can easily select it. If you have stored it somewhere else, you can easily define this here as well. But since I already have it here, we can just apply it and click OK. And that's the only thing we have to set up. Now we can make use of one of the magic PHPStorm shortcuts called Run Context Configuration. So I'm inside my post factory test class, and inside this it creates a new post file method. And I'm now going to activate this shortcut, and you can see it has already run this test. And that's super cool because what I can do now is I can go to another test method and do the same. Just run this shortcut and this method will be run. And even cooler is if I now go in between those methods and use this shortcut again, then it runs all the tests or free tests of the whole class. And the first time that I encountered it, it was like mind-blowing because this makes testing so easy with PHPStorm, and I use this shortcut all the time. By the way, for every shortcut that I use, you see this banner at the bottom that tells you what shortcut I'm using, the name and the key combination. The key combination that you see is the one that I have used and set for myself. So these are my custom shortcuts that you can also use if you have selected and imported those settings. If you want to use your own shortcuts, you can use the name of the shortcuts to find the shortcut key combination inside the settings. All right, so why is this not working? I think it's interesting and I want to show you. So if we go to our run edit configuration settings. So these settings are being used for different things like testing. So that's what we have done, but you can also define run configurations for the HTTP client, which is built in PHPStorm as well. And now for every time we use this run context configuration shortcut, it creates this configuration file on the fly. And this file defines what method and what class we are using, and that's why it's working in the back. So I don't care if we have these different configuration files for every method or class that we're using, because it works so easy. And yeah, mostly I don't need to go to those settings because yeah, it's so easy to set up if you have enabled the PHP command line interpreter and then only use this shortcut. So before we can talk about running our tests, we also need to talk about creating them. So we have already one test file here called post factory test, but let's see how we can create a new one. And the most simple way would be to go to my sidebar, test, and now create a new test here. So I've been using this new shortcut here, and then I can look for PHP test. And this could be PHP unit, Codeception, or PHP spec by default, but we are interested in PHP unit. Then we could check here the class that we want to test. So we could provide those information here as well, but we just want to quickly create a new example test. And here we go. And as you see, by default, it's already extending PHP unit's test case, and we could start writing our test methods. Another way of creating some test files could be through your command line. So a lot of frameworks like Laravel have some features to create a test through a command. So in Laravel, this would be artisan, make test, and yeah, example to test here. And as you can see, here we have now a new test. This is under feature because that's the default for this one here. So if you're using the command line, then this makes sense too. But instead of using the command line, there's also a nice feature to use the run anything prompt of PHPStorm. Here you can run things like npm installs, but you can also run command line commands from your framework, like also from Laravel. Here can we see the last one. Let's make another one. Let's make number 3. And as you can see, now we have this one as well. And since we're already talking about Laravel features for creating new tests, there is this nice plugin called Laravel IDEA, and it has a code generation prompt. And here I can also just search for tests, and now I can easily create a feature or a unit test. And this would be now our example 4 test. And now we have this one here as well. And what's nice with those comments from your framework, they provide already some functionality that you need. So for example, features tests in Laravel are extending a specific test case class and not the one from PHP unit itself. Now that we know how to create test files, we also need to talk about creating test methods. So let's say we want to have a new test method inside here. Of course, I could type it everything myself or just copy this one test here, but yeah, we are a little bit lazy. We are writing enough business logic ourselves, so it makes sense to use some features to speed this process a little bit up. So similar to the new feature inside the file tree. So if you're in the file tree and run Command N, then we see this new files that you can create. And there's something similar when you're inside a file. So if I do the same, here you can see there are a few things that I could create, like a constructor or setup method, but also a test method. So let's try this out. Run it, and here we have our new test method, and let's say test example. And as you can see, it already starts with test. So yeah, PHP unit knows that this is now a new test to run. But if you're like me, I always like to adapt my templates to my special needs. So for example, as you can see, I like to have this comment above my test to tell PHP unit that it's a test, and I like my test to start with it creates something, for example, and then I like to have the return type here and things like that. So this is when it makes sense to adapt those templates. And if we go to this new comment again, and here to the right, you can see I can also edit the template. And this way we are here now inside the file and code templates, and here we can find the method that we're going to use to create this test. And there are a few things you can change here, like the name and other things. There are some variables that you can change. And yeah, this is super helpful if you want to adapt this. But what I prefer is using a live template. So I'm using a live template for all different things where I create some code. And I can create my one with just running tests here. And now I have a new test, and let's call it is an example test. And I also have those arrange, act, and assert comments here. And now I can easily start typing. If we go now to the live templates, you can see here I have my custom ones, and here is the one that we have been using here. And that's pretty cool because yeah, this is the method of my test here. Here I can define where it ends, and I can also add those comments here. And yeah, it's super flexible, and that's why I love to use them, especially for creating my test methods. So as always, PHPStorm provides us with a few options, and you just have to pick the one that best fits your personal needs. Alright, let's talk about running our tests. So I've shown you already in the setup process that we have this super magic run context configuration shortcut where we can run specific test methods like this one here. Here we go, or let's run this one here. So if I'm inside a method, we can easily run this method, this test method with the shortcut. And if I'm in between, I can run all of the methods through inside this class. But you probably also have seen these icons here next to my test class, but also next to the test method. And by the way, they're a little bit different if you're using a default theme and not the one that I have provided. but still you have some icons here to run specific tests, and then you can do this as well. So that's also sometimes handy, since they're already here, you can just click them and run those tests that you want to check. So I'm pretty sure you have already noticed this run window here where we have some information about the test. So here on the right side we have the output from PHPStorm. So now you can see that everything was passing, and here on the left you have a summary of what did happen. So here you can see the test that we were running, the file and the methods, and also here you can check only the failed ones, which is the default case where you don't see any of those files. Let's also check out what happens if a test is failing. So now we have changed this test here, and you can see here we have the output here, the message, and we can easily go to the exact line here, which is this one where we have changed the code. And now, while only showing the tests that were failing, we can see which one that was. Let's bring this back here to a test that is passing, and now we are back. What I also like about PHPStorm that it shows you some better error messages. So let's create a new test here, and let's call it is equal, and let's make an assertion. This assert equals. Now let's say we have an array. Let's say we have here 1, 2, and the other one would be 1, 2, 3, 34, for example. And if we run this now, you can see that the test is failing, but we can also click here to see the difference. And this is now really helpful if you have a lot of tests and some structures that you need to compare, and you can see easily what was different, and then you probably know what was going on with this test. So this comparison failure feature is also something that I really like about with PHPStorm. Of course, as always, PHPStorm provides a lot of more features here, but these are the main ones that I am using myself every day. So yeah, make sure to check them out yourself if you're more interested in those. So like mentioned, mostly I use this run context configuration shortcut to run my test. But there is one more thing that I need quite a lot, and that is running all of my tests. And yeah, there is not actually a shortcut that we can use, but we can build something easily ourselves. Okay, so here's what we need to do. We need to create a new configuration. So let's go to edit configuration, and here we've seen the ones that we have already been using through running our run context configuration shortcut, which is creating them on the fly. But now we want to create one ourselves. So it's a PHP unit one. Let's call it all tests. Let's select the directory. So this would be here our test directory. Select the interpreter, apply, and okay, what's next? So how do we even run this? And yeah, the cool thing is, what I didn't know for a long time, inside the run anything prompt, we can also run those run configurations. And here we also have this for all of our tests. And now I can easily run all of my tests. So how cool is this? I'm just prompting this up, select it, run it, and here we go. And the cool thing is now we can also create this maybe for our feature and unit tests. So if you want to run those separately as well, PHP unit, feature tests, select the directory. I just want to show you how simple this is. Interpreter. And since we're also here, let's create also one now for our unit tests. Unit tests. Select the directory. Here we go. You know it already. Interpreter, applied. Here we go. And now if we open up of our prompt, we can see them all in here. If you don't see them yet inside the recent, just search for them like unit, and then you will see them here. And now we can easily run our unit test, or we can easily run our feature test. And that's for me the best testing setup that I have. I have the shortcut to easily run a method or a class inside where I am right now, but I also have those run configurations which I can easily trigger from the run anything prompt, and this way I can easily just test all of my tests and then I can move on refactoring or whatever I do. So yeah, take some minutes to set this up and you are good to go testing your framework. This is how it's done. Okay everyone, so this is my most favorite tip that I have for you. I've just discovered this a few months back and it changed my workflow completely. So I'm talking about the run anything console here. And what it does is, it just runs specific commands that you would normally run inside your console. So for example, there are npm commands that I can use, or here are artisan commands that I can use. And as you can see, we have auto completion for all of them. But here it gets really cool. I also use this for specific test configuration that I have in my application. So this means I can easily run just my unit test, just my feature test, or maybe all of my tests. I hit enter, here we go, I see the result, I close it and I can move on working. And this way I'm much faster because I don't have to open up the console for all of these comments. Please give it a try, I'm sure you will love it too. People who code also often need to present their code. This could be at work, this could be a call for streaming, a workshop, a conference, you name it, lots of different situations. The main problem here is that the viewer is mostly not as close to the screen as you are, or he sees your video through a smaller video player. And then it always gets difficult to read the code. So here are 3 different solutions that we have regarding PHPStorm. The first one would be to increase the font size. If we search for font now, you can see we have different fonts. We have this font here, for example, which is the font for the IDE, for the menus, and all those kind of things. So we can increase this. But then we have also this editor font where we're using our color scheme font, and here you can also increase this font. So, and then we also have our console font. So this means in the end we have to change 3 different fonts in order to make everything bigger. So yeah, as it sounds already, it is a little bit annoying to do this. Then the second option would be to use the presentation mode within PHPStorm. So let's try out this one. Okay, as you can see, everything is already a little bit bigger here. If we go to our sidebar, this is much bigger. Let's check out the search. This is also much bigger. So PHPStorm tries to make everything a little bit bigger so that it's better for you to read. But as you can see, all those little things like this text here doesn't fit that perfect anymore, and there are also some problems with how files are open and what you can read. So it feels like this is a little bit buggy right now, and I know that they are working on this to make this a little bit better. So that's why I often also don't use this presentation mode, because it doesn't work as I would expect it to work. So what I mostly do is I change my resolution, because this is, in my opinion, the best way for recording videos or presenting. So for example, let's exit the presentation mode again. And now let's change here the resolution of my screen to 2080 720. And let's also go into the full screen mode now. And this is how I have recorded my videos. And the good thing about this is now everything else is bigger as well. So if you change to your browser or to any of those settings, everything is bigger in general. And this means now everything looks more consistent. And this is what I prefer if you have to present something and you want to make sure everybody can read it well. Another thing I also always recommend is checking out the productivity guide, which you can find here under help, or can also open it up with a shortcut, of course. And it gives you some information about your usage of PHPStorm, like how long you've been running it, how much typos it had saved you, how much bugs it has saved you, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But now you can see also features you have used. So I always like to filter them to the most used ones. And as you can see, I'm running a PHPStorm installation, which is pretty new. So these numbers are pretty low, but for you it will be much more. But yeah, you can see here all those features that you have used the most and when you have used them. So I use syntax or selection a lot, the recent files pop-up a lot, and I always love to compare this stats with other people and see what they are using. Because here you find really cool features that maybe someone else is using and not you, or the other way around. So yeah, give this a look, share those stats with others, and let's learn from each other too. You probably already know about the global search in PHPStorm, which you can open up with double shift and then search for anything like a file, a class, a method, a property, and even some PHPStorm settings. But the downside to this is that you get a lot of results for every search. So if I search for user here, you will see a class, some properties, even migration and blade files. But yeah, in this case, it makes sense to use some of those specific searches. So just search for the class or the file, symbol, or an action. It makes sense to remember all those specific shortcuts to become much faster while looking for the one thing you're really looking for. Often you will find yourself in a class which is a little bit bigger and where it gets pretty difficult to see what is happening here. Also, if you look for something specific, like there's a method called first or something similar, of course you can just search for it and maybe you will find it, but maybe not. Here you can see already different results, but it gets a little bit confusing. In these cases, I really love the file structure feature of PHPStorm, which opens up this dialog here where I can see an overview of this class. And I can see different properties, I can see different methods, and I get a really good overview of what is happening here, even though it is a lot. Even better, you can just start typing and filter results, and now I can easily see what are the methods or properties that starts with first or have first in between. I really love this feature and I use it a lot to get a short summary of the current file that I'm right in now. In our application, we often need to navigate between different files. So here, for example, I'm in a test and now I'm using this post factory. And if I want to check out this create method, I can use the go to declaration shortcut in order to directly get here and check out what is happening. But the cool thing now, this also works the other way around. If I click it here now and use the go to declaration shortcut, you can see where this method is being used as well, and I can check it out here. This gets even more powerful if you're navigating through code that not belongs to you. So for example, the collection and the toArray method here. If I want to know how this is working, I can easily go to this file here where I have no idea where this file is located and easily come back here. So this is super important if you navigate through your application, because you will learn so much more about a framework, about packages that you use, or about code that you have not written yourself. When you're like me, trying to not have any tool windows open while you're coding, then you often need to bring them up with a shortcut, and you also need to close them afterwards again. So you can do this with the same shortcut. But there is one downside to this. If I now go to the editor, I need to click the shortcut twice to go to the toolbar and then close it. So instead, I'm using one shortcut that just closes all open tool windows. And it's called hide all windows. And this is pretty cool because if you have two of the windows open, you can just close both of them again with just one shortcut. So this way you can always focus on the editor and you can remove all the open toolbars. The global search in PHPStorm not only lets you search for specific files, you can also change some settings in PHPStorm. So for example, I don't use tabs, but if I want to use them, I can search for tab placement and I can easily bring them up at the top, or I can remove them again. And the same goes if you search for a specific tool window. You can also search for to do and just bring this tool window up through the global search. Or what's also cool, you can just look for a specific plugin and can easily turn it on and off through this search. As always, it makes sense to use those specific searches in PHPStorm, and if you already know you're looking for a specific setting, then use the Action tab to search for that. I prefer a super clean look of my editor without any toolbars or buttons that would distract me. The downside to this is that, I have to remember a lot of shortcuts. But in the end, I see it still as an advantage because you will become much faster. Still not so easy to remember. One little trick here that can help you is a hidden shortcut that brings up the tool window bars, and this happens when you press double command and hold it. Now you will see at the border all those tool window bars and you can just easily click one to open them up. You will not find this shortcut in the key map section, so that truly is a hidden gem that I have here for you. Sometimes we're not navigating between files, but just within one file. And this is when the recent files, for example, does not help you anymore. So for example, I'm here in this router class and I'm checking out how this dispatch to route method is working. I use the go to declaration to find this method here, and then I see we're running the route, we find the route. Let's check out what find route looks like. I see. And then here's also this run route. Let's check this out as well. And now I want to go back to, one of those recent locations. And now this is something we can't do with the recent files, but we are glad there's also a shortcut for recent locations. And here now I can easily see I've checked out the find route method. Here was the run and find route that we were also looking at, and this is where we started our dispatch to route method. Now this is super handy if you're discovering some long classes and you're checking out how is something working, and then it makes sense to open up this recent location to go back to one of those places where you have been with your cursor. In PHPStorm, you can use live templates to bring in predefined code snippets. One live template that I use a lot is one that I've created, which I can trigger with test, and it brings up a new test method for me. So this is now this new test method here. I already know that I have no arguments. I know that I have a return type of void. I can also easily bring in those comments already, and this is where the cursor ends. And if we go to the live templates, you can see that here I have my custom ones, and here I have the one defined for my test. And this is where it really makes sense if you start customizing your own live templates so you can use them to your personal needs, because these are the things that you will use a lot, and this will make you more efficient. So I'm pretty sure you know the situation. You want to do something with a variable like user, and then it turns out, you want to wrap it, and then you maybe do something like this, and now you have the if condition around it. But it turns out there's a much nicer way in PHPStorm. So what you can use here is a postfix template. It goes, you add a dot, and then you can use the abbreviation. So for example, if, and tab will give you now the if statement around your user. But there is also more, like the dd method that I have created. And this means now you have different solutions for different scenarios. If you have already written a variable, you can easily use one of those postfix templates, and it turns out there are a lot of them here, like for JavaScript or PHP. So here I have a view file where I'm going to list some jobs. And what I want to do now is get a link around this job name here. So what I've done in the past is pretty simple. I just created a new href tag with a link to something. Then I get this closing a tag here, which I don't need here. Then I would go to the end and edit there again. Not that convenient, right? Yeah, so here's a much better approach. Let's get back to the state from before. I'm going to select the whole line. I'm going to open up the surround with dialog, and now I can surround our selection with a tag. Click it, it will be an a tag, href, link, boom, here we go, done. This is how you can use surround with templates to easily surround one of your selection with a tag. So as I've shown you already, we can easily select something and then use the surround with dialog to surround it with a tag. But what we can also do is use a custom template, like here this href, which I have created, which is now even a little bit faster because we don't have to define that it is an a tag. And if we go to our live templates here, you can see this template that I have created. I just needed to add this selection variable here. And this way we can use this live template with the surround with features. And the only thing is very straightforward, like what you would have to do with a live template. So make sure if you often end up selecting something and then surround it with something specific, create a custom surround with template, which is in case just a live template with a selection variable in it. Besides using surround with tags and specific templates, we can also use it in combination with Emmet. And Emmet is a kind of plugin that is available for all different IDEs and also included in PHPStorm by default. And Emmet helps you to write faster HTML and CSS. For example, if I need a list, I could write it like this. I need an unordered list and I need list items with the classes list none and text sm, and I would like 4 of them. And if I click tab here, you can see now easily we have this list, and now we could provide maybe some cities for our jobs and so on. And you can use something similar in combination with surround with. So what we could do now here is select something like this paragraph and then use the surround with, and now click Emmet. And now we can say we want this inside a div with the class flex and flex column, for example. Boom, here you go. It's all being created for you with Emmet and surround with. The next tip is a really simple one, but since this feature always ends up in my top 3 used PHPStorm features, I need to show it to you as well. So if you want to select something, I use extend selection shortcut. And then you can use up and down to select more or less. And this is really cool because now I have selected the word, the line, the whole content of the method, the whole method itself, and one more time, and we have this whole class. So this way you can easily select what you really want to have in your selection. Many developers like to use split screens because it makes sense to show different files next to each other. One use case would be here where I'm inside a test and I also want to see the class that I'm actually testing. And there are different ways to do this, but here's the best one that I have discovered. So what I do is I open up my recent files because mostly I have this other class here as well. And it's this one. And now instead of just hitting enter, I hit shift enter. And this will open up this file in write split mode. And 99% of the cases, this is exactly what I want. And how cool is this? You just open up the recent files, check the file, and then open it in split mode. So the only shortcut you need to remember is how to unsplit everything. So that's the only thing you need, because everything else you can just do from write your recent locations or recent files. And the cool thing about this also works from the file tree. Select a file, shift enter, here you go. When you're working with version control, PHPStorm will tell you about local changes right inside your file. So for example, if I change this string here, we can see that this line is highlighted now. I can click it and I can see what has been changed, and I can also roll it back. So this is pretty nice if you have a few changes in a file and you want to check out what has changed. If you're going to change a little bit more of the lines, we can see this now inside the div monitor div dialog. And here you can see these are the lines that were added. So this gives you a nice feature of showing what has changed and easily roll it back right here from your editor. While you're working on your test, you often end up switching between the test file and the file that you're actually testing. And of course, you can use your recent files dialog to easily go there, but I'm glad there's also a shortcut for this. It's called Go to Test Subject, and the cool thing is it works both ways around. So I can easily go to the class that I'm testing and click it again, and I am back to my test. This works because PHPStorm can automatically link your test to the test subject. But sometimes this is not possible, and this is when you have to define this yourself and tell PHPStorm what class you're actually covering with your tests. The almighty run context configuration shortcut in PHPStorm is a live feature and is what I'm using all the time. So I'm inside a test class here, and I'm now inside this method. I run the shortcut, and now this test method is being run. If I go down here, run the shortcut again, now this method is being run. If I place my cursor in between, all of those test methods are being run, and you can see this here in this result. So this means you can put your cursor where you want it to be and can easily test it with the shortcut, and you don't have to think about how to just test one specific class or one method. I really love this shortcut, and I can only recommend everybody to use it as well. I'm a big fan of arrow functions, and I try to use them wherever I can because I think they are better readable and you have less code. And here is a function, a closure that we're using here, that we're returning to this map method where we could use an arrow function as well. Of course, we could just change it ourselves, but yeah, we have PHPStorm and it is here to help us again. So if I open up the context action, you can see that we can already convert it to an arrow function. And here it goes. And this always works if you just have a one-liner in a closure and if you have to return something. And now how much cooler does this look? I think it looks pretty nice. So yeah, give this a try as well. Also, what you could do is you could also tell PHPStorm that it should tell you about those changes with a warning. So if I go to my settings, inspections, here we have closure can be converted to an arrow function. And here I could change this to a warning, apply it, and yeah, you can see now it's underlined, and now this is even easier, and we can convert it to an arrow function. Give this a try, I think that's pretty cool. If-else statements always provide some kind of complexity to our code, still we often have to work with them. But I'm glad PHPStorm has some nice options here for us. So if I open up the context actions, you can see our options here. For example, I can flip the if-else statement. And this is something that I use a lot because I like to prevent negations in my conditions. That's because negations are always harder to read than the other way around. So this is pretty cool that you can change this through PHPStorm. Another way would be to simplify this. So this is possible because our condition is very simple, and now we can use this one-liner, and I really like how PHPStorm lets us do this. But there is one more option. Let's flip our condition back, and now let's use here this new option that we have called split the workflows. And this is possible through a plugin called PHP inspection extended, which is free and which I highly recommend to use. So what this does now is it gets rid of the else statement at all. And this is the process that I like the best, because now we have our special conditions at the beginning where we check if the user is not active, then we return null. And here at the end, we're just returning the default way of this method. And this way our code gets much better to read, because it's always difficult with the else statement to think again, okay, what was the if statement again? Okay, what is the else condition now? And this way we can get rid of this. So check out those if-else features in PHPStorm. Let's talk about Git. PHPStorm is an IDE that not only helps you with coding, but also with tools around the terminal, PHP unit testing, and also version control. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next videos. We will discover Git features in PHPStorm. I can't think of any projects in the last year where I didn't need version control. And that just shows how important Git and version control in general has become in the last years. So let me show what PHPStorm has to offer for us here. So normally when working with Git, we are first introducing some changes to our code. So let's say we add here a string test, and then we could add this change to our Git stage. So we could do it with git add everything, and then we would write a commit message to create a new commit. So that's how we normally work with Git. But in PHPStorm, this is a little bit different. So with every change in your code, you see a little icon here or a little different background color saying that here was a change. And if you click it, you can see, okay, here something was changed. And here you see the change, and everything is being added to the default change list. And if we introduce another change, so maybe add some text here, now here we can see the change as well, and it's also being added to PHPStorm's default change list. So if I now want to create a new commit with those two changes, I would first open up the VCS operations, which is a nice shortcut providing you with the most Git features that we need, and then I would use commit here. And this brings up this little window here on the side showing me what has changed. And here you can see we have our default change list, and there's another change list which is empty. And here we can see, okay, this file has changed, and I can easily click it and see here those changes as well. So that's pretty nice to see what files you want to commit. You can exclude them, include them again, which is especially nice if you changed multiple files. But you can also go to one file and just only use this change and not this change. So there are nice little handy features which you can use in order to create the perfect commit. And then here again, we can write our message here. So let's say this is our first commit, and then we can easily commit now our change. As you have seen, we've now made our first commit, but we also could use this commit and push, and this way our changes would be pushed to our repository as well. And that's already how you can use the built-in features to create a new commit, add a message, see the changes through the different change lists, and then also push it to a repository. Alright, so now it gets a little bit more interesting. We're going to introduce two more changes here. So we're changing those two lines. I'm now bringing back the commit window here. And again, we see that we have those two changes here. We can easily check them out. But now what we can do is we have here some settings. And what we can do here is, for example, define a specific author if you don't want to use the default Git author. You can use sign-off commits. So some projects need you to have those. This is when your name and your email address will be added to every commit. But more interesting for me, it gets here with the before and after commit hooks. So I call it hooks because what it does, it checks a few things before the commit or after the commit. So for example, we can make sure that we reformat our code. So reformatting is a feature which you can use in PHPStorm to format your code according to some rules. So I'm using this a lot. And also rearrange code or optimize imports or perform some code analysis. You can also do that. So this will show you if there was an error in your code before you commit it. Or also check for to-dos. This is also something that I use quite a lot. And you can also use clean up and update copyright if needed. So let's try out this one here where we check to-dos. So let's add a to-do here. Let's just bring one in here. So a to-do is defined by a specific string. And for me, it's to-dos. And then I would say, don't forget to do this. So, and if I now try to commit this here, PHPStorm will tell us, oh, hey, here's a to-do. You maybe forgot about this to-do. And then I can review it and it opens up the to-do window. And here we can easily get again to this to-do. And maybe we need to change something before we can commit this. And that's now really handy. So let's bring back our commit dialog. And as I showed you, can use this for a bunch of different things that PHPStorm checks before committing. And also you can do something that's being done after the commit. So I don't have anything set up, but you could run any external tools as well. Next to committing and pushing, working with different branches is also something that you will use a lot while working with Git. All the branch options can be found when you go to the VSC operation and then go to branches. So this will open up this branch window, but I have also defined a specific shortcut to go there directly. And from here, it's very easy to create a new branch. See the current one, so that's the one with the tag here. You can see the other one, so I have also refactoring or a testing branch, but you can also take a look at remote branches which you might not have on your system. But it goes on. There are a ton of things you can do. You can push a specific branch, you can show the difference, you can merge one branch into another. So here, for example, merge the refactoring branch into the current one. So this is also something that I use a lot. So there are tons of things that you can do with branches here. And one thing I also like, if you're in a project with a lot of branches, so a lot more than you have here, you can add this little star here. So you can do this with your mouse, and those are always shown on the top of your branch list. And this is really helpful if you're working on a bunch of branches and you don't want to see the others. Just mark them and you will see they always here at the top. So I did this now with the mouse, but I found out you can do this as well with the space. So you can easily add those stars to specific branches through a shortcut. And you know me, I always prefer using a shortcut if possible. And as I've shown you, there's a lot you can do. I like how easily you can get to all those features and just use your cursors and shortcut to merge, rebase, create a new branch, check out a branch, and do a lot of those things. So this is when I really think those built-in features of PHPStorm are super helpful, because it makes you much faster, and this is very important to me. So make sure to check out all those features here and give it a try. I can only recommend it. So I guess you're now already familiar with the concept of a change list in PHPStorm. We're changing something and by default it gets added to the default change list. But as you've shown you, there are also different change lists. So I've created one for feature A. So let's say this change is for feature A, and now I'm doing another change. And let's say this one is for a different change list. So let's create this and let's say that's feature B. And the cool thing now is if you open up your commit message, you see those change lists here. And you can easily see now, okay, which changes were added to which change list. And this now makes it easy. Now you only want to release and commit this feature, or maybe just feature B, and this is how you can separate your changes. And this often happens when you're inside your code, you're doing a lot of changes and you don't want to commit all of those changes in the same commit. Then you can use different change lists to specify which modifications of your code gets where and with what commit. And this is what I really like, because it's very easy to do this right here from the left of your screen. Choose the change list, create a new one, and then inside your commit dialog you have this overview of what you want to include into a commit. So make sure to check out those change lists and create your custom ones too. We cannot talk about Git without talking about conflicts too. So the conflicts happen when you work in a team or with other developers, and you work on the same file. And then it happens you get a conflict. But it's nothing to worry about. That's just the way how it works when working with Git, and it's easy to resolve them too, especially inside of PHPStorm. Before working with the PHPStorm features to interact with the repository, I was using the terminal, the command line, for everything I needed to do. Okay, so let's check out an example. We're going to merge a branch here, and it's called git conflicts. Okay, and as you can see, now we see that we have a merge error. Auto merging was not working. We have a conflict, and we have to deal with this ourselves. And we can also see this here in my branch. So then I would go to my file and I would check, okay, here I see, and this is the code that I had, and here's the code from the different branch, and now I have to decide which one I want to keep in my code. And then I would probably check, okay, which one is the one that I need, so maybe I keep my one, and then I would delete the rest. I would do another commit, and this is how I would solve my conflict. It's working, nothing wrong with this approach, but I often ended up with some difficult situation where it was not so easy to see which code was which and which do I want to keep. So I think there are better options to solve with conflicts, especially when you have some tools that also show a little bit about the different options you have. Okay, let's abort this and let's try this now again with PHPStorm. So what I would do in PHPStorm, I would open up my branch dialog, and now I would merge this branch with the conflict into my current branch. And as you can see, PHPStorm already detects this conflict, and we're seeing here, okay, this is this file, we have a problem here, and we can right away say, okay, I want to accept my changes, I don't care about the others, or I can say I just accept theirs, and then we would have already solved it. But if we want to take a closer look, which we often want, we can click here on merge, and we now see an overview of what is happening. Okay, so for this video I'm using quite a low resolution, which also means that everything is big and it's a little bit harder to see. On your computer it will be easier. But on the left, if I scroll this here, you can see this is my code, my file. Then on the right side, we have the code from the other branch. And if we scroll down here, we can see, okay, here we have some change, and you can also see that we're scrolling at the same time with both files. So here's one change, and I think there should be another one, and here as well. So on the left and on the right, I have only read-only access, so I can't change anything here. But in the middle, I could change stuff if I want to. So again, we have the options to accept just the left, which was my code, or accept the right, which was the code from the different branch. So this is similar to the options that we had before. But what I also like, inside here, we can check now, okay, here's the change, and I can say, okay, I'd like to accept this change here, for example. Let's change this, and now let's go down to the other change, and now I want to get this here from the other file. So this means inside here we are capable of saying, okay, from this file I want this change, and from that file I want the other change. So we can mix it to our needs. So this is pretty nice. And now I can apply, and then everything would be already working. Let's assume we want to cancel this here. So, and close this now. So this means we still have here our conflict inside the code. We also have this window here where we could just click it to open it up, but this will also be gone in just a minute. So if you have a conflict and you're inside this merge state, you can also use the version control prompt to resolve this conflict. So you will find this option here as well. And here you can directly go back to this window as well. But for now, let's say we just want to keep my code, click it, and we have successfully solved our conflict. Okay, so as I mentioned, I was using the terminal for dealing with conflicts for quite a long time, but those little things in PHPStorm made me switch to use those built-in features. Because I'm just faster this way, and I also like the visual overview of what has changed. So give this a try, I'm pretty sure you will like it too. What would be coding without bugs? I actually cannot imagine our work without them. So debugging has become a major part of our job as a developer. It's a skill that we need every day because we're solving problems all the time. In general, there are two main ways of debugging. First, we have the dump and die approach, and then we have step debugging. And both have their advantages and drawbacks, and we're going to take a look at both approaches in the next videos. We're going to check how PHPStorm can support us with those approaches and how I debug applications myself. So let's find out and let's find some bugs. So let's start with the most simple and most used approach that I see in the PHP world, which is debugging by dumping stuff out. So I'm sure you have been using this approach before, maybe without noticing that there's a name for this approach. But first, let's take a look at the bug of this application. So we're going to move on with the example of my blog post. And here we have a little page showing all my blog posts. But it's not working as expected because we see here 5 posts, but one of them shouldn't be listed here. And that's the last one here. And that's because when we take a look at my posts, which I have here under posts, and here the last one, as you can see, let's make this bigger, this post should be hidden. So we don't want to show this post, and different to the others, if I check them out, hidden is false. So only this one should not be seen, and this is not working, and that's a little bug for our demo today. So let's check out how this is working. So we're going to start here where I have my routes, and here the main route is being connected to the home controller. So let's get in here. And here, as you can see, I'm grabbing all my posts and then I'm providing them to the welcome view, and that's how we see them on the welcome page. So with a typically dump and die approach, we would just dump stuff out, and most PHP frameworks have this dump and die method where you dump something out and you also stop the script. So if I now refresh the page, we can see here that I get my posts, which is a collection instance, and here I have all my posts. And you probably have seen it here, we do receive 5 posts, and actually we only want 4 of them. So this means here is also already something wrong. Okay, so with the dump and die approach, we would now check, okay, how do we get this post? We are inside here, this post collector. So let me get in here. And let's see what we do here. So first we are grabbing those markdown files, which I've shown you before. Just to make sure that this is working, let's also dump this out here. Again, we're making use of this handy dump and die method. And as you can see now, we get back here an array with all the posts, and here's also the last one, which we don't want to show, but it's okay to load all of them here. Okay, so what's happening next? Next, we're going to make a collection of this files array, and then we're mapping over them. And what we do here is we grab the markdown information through this YAML front matter helper, and then we provide this information to a new post object. So this means we're mapping this array of files to objects. So this means when I dump this out here, and when using levels collection, we can chain those DD methods inside those chained methods. So now I should see what I get back after the map method, and I do. So after this method, we have post objects, and they have the information that we need for our content, as well as showing if something is hidden or not. So let's take a look at this last blog article here. And let's go down here. And as you can see here, hidden is false. Okay, so this is where now the issue lies, because hidden should be true here. So something is wrong here with this creating post object. And just to make sure, I can also chain this DD method after the filter method, because here with the filter method, we want to filter out all the posts which are hidden. And when I dump this out here, I should still see all the posts. So this should be the error. And if I refresh it now, yeah, everything is still the same. We still have those 5 post objects. So this means here we have an issue. All right, so for us, this means we need to dig a little deeper and see how we create those post objects. So let's start maybe by dumping out here this post meta, so to see what we get here. So again, we're using this helper here to get the information from our markdown files, because our blog posts are markdown files, and here we have the title, category, summary, and then the content. Okay, so let's see what we get here. So that's what this looks like. This is a package by Sparsy, and here we can see we have this meta information where we have all information like the title, categories, what I have defined in my markdown files. And here I also have here hidden, which is false in this case. Okay, let's get back here. So I don't see anything wrong here. So the next would be to check how we create this post object. So again, I'm going to get into this method by navigating to the declaration of this file. And let's see, what do we have here? So here we are receiving this post meta information, which is a document object in this case, and then we are calling this meta helper method to get the data. And then if we go here we already have found our issue, because we're checking for visibility and not for hidden. So this means this should be an easy fix. Give this another try. Let's go back to our collector helper. So this means now after the filter method, well, maybe let's start here after the map method and see if the hidden field is now correctly being created. So this is the last one that we're interested in, this last blog post. Let's go down, and finally we see hidden is true. So this means this should be working now. Let's get rid of this here. And let's try our dump and die method now after the filter method. So now we should only see 4 blog posts, and we do. So this means when we get now finally rid of our dump and die method, we should only see our 4 blog articles here on our welcome page, and that's what we get here. I know this is just a basic example of debugging, and we probably could have prevented this issue by writing a specific test for our post collector class, but I think you get the point here about dump debugging. So a benefit of dump debugging is that it's very straightforward. I'm sure you have already done it. It's very simple. You want to know a specific value at a specific point in your script, and you just dump it out to see what it is. And this information helps you to move on debugging and to find the issue. A disadvantage is that you might forget debug statements inside your code, which could lead to serious issues on your live application. Also, you're very limited with dump debugging. You can only dump something out. You have to write those code fragments inside your application. And as I mentioned, you often end up forgetting them. And you might not see it immediately, but then on your production system, this could be an issue. Very similar approach to dump debugging is also by logging stuff. So what we can do here is, for example, I'm going to log all my posts here, which I receive from a post collector with this info log helper method of Laravel in this case. So if we refresh the page now, nothing is changing here, but inside my log file, we now have this information with all my posts. So the advantage is that you don't see it on the front end. So you could also do this on your live system if it benefits you. But on the disadvantages of sites, it's very difficult to see here what information we get, and we might need to copy it out somewhere else to format it and to see what we get here. But sometimes it's useful, so that's why I also wanted to mention this approach here. And that's already it for dump debugging. It's very straightforward, very easy to do. You don't need any extra software or tools to make this work, and it just works immediately. Also, what I've been doing a lot, and I see other people, is not dumping out a specific content like files, but maybe just dump out a statement so that you can see that this file and this line was triggered. So for example, this way I make sure that I end up here in this all method. And it seems a little bit funny and not very convenient, but it helps you a lot if you want to make sure that a specific file, a specific method was being triggered. And this gives you some more information about how your application is working and how you could debug and find a specific problem. So again, a very easy and straightforward approach with dump debugging, but still very useful. And I see a lot of people using it, and I like it myself as well. Hello, Ray. Ray is a debugging application by a Belgian company called Spassy. You might know them already. It's a very similar approach to the dump and die approach, but the output will be sent to a dedicated desktop application, which you can see here on the screen. So the output won't be on the browser, which is already a big advantage. It's like a little monitor showing you the parts of your application, the things that you want to debug, and the output that you want to see in a very beautiful way. Ray is a paid product, and I want to show you because it's very useful and I use it myself. So unfortunately, I don't get paid for showing this to you, but it's just how I do debugging and things that I use myself. And that's why it's important for me to show this to you. Ray is available for Apple, Windows, and Linux. And in the next video, we're going to check out how to install and use it. In order to use the Ray application, you need first to buy it and download it. And then we also need a specific package for your application. And let's check out the docs for how this works. And as you can see here, we have different packages, like just for a PHP project, for Laravel, for WordPress, Ruby, JavaScript, and some more. Since I'm working here on a Laravel application, I'm going to use the Laravel package here. So let's install this now together. So it seems the installation process was successful. So let's take a look at how we can now use Ray. And as you can see here, similar to the dump and die approach, we also have kind of dump methods, which are now just called array. And we have multiple ones here where we can pass some strings here, we can pass an array, so we can pass different types here, and we also can give them a color, we can have multiple arguments, and a lot more. So let's give this now a try. As you can see here on the right, I have already the array desktop application. And as we've read now, let's try to dump something out here, like array is here, and let's give this a try. We're going to refresh our page. And as you can see, nothing was happening here. But if we now go back to the array desktop application app, you can see here that we see this output now here on this desktop application. And that's now pretty powerful and cool because you don't see any output more on the browser, but you see it here directly in this monitor, which is nice because in the end we just want to see the output and we don't care it being on the browser itself. Actually, it's better to not have it there because you don't run into any errors if you forget those array calls inside your code. Also, a big advantage is here that array has a very beautiful output. So let's try now to give it a try now with our posts object. I'm going to refresh the page again. And as you can see here now, we have our collection items here with all the posts, and I can easily click through them, and we have some nice, beautiful output here to give this a look. We also see down here where we outputted this, and we can also directly go from this link to this position here inside our ID, which I really like. Then what we've also seen is that we can provide a specific color to our array calls. So let's give red a try. Let's refresh again our page. Let's go back here. And now you can see here that we have this little red indicator here showing that this got the color red. And what this does here is we can now switch between different colors. So for example, now we want to only show the green ones. For example, we don't have one here, but now let's add the red ones, and now we see our output here. And this is very useful if you want to put out a lot of stuff, but you don't want to see all of them at once. Then you can give them this kind of categories and colors, and then you see and easily can sort them out here in the array desktop application. Okay, if we now get back to our little issue here with our blog posts, again, you can see here that we again see all of them. And yeah, if we would now to debug the same issue with array, it would be very similar to our dump and die approach. So first we maybe check out the posts like we did here. And then maybe we would go inside our post controller and then maybe check here our files, which is an array. Let's do this, refresh. And now we see here our array. No, we don't. And that's because, because I still had my filter enabled. So now we see here all of the files. And then we would move on. What's also nice here with the Laravel package of array, we can again chain here array methods inside the collection, which I think is really cool. We don't get auto-completion for that because that's working through a macro. But yeah, it works. So I think we can just run the array call. I'm not sure. Let's give this a try. I'm going to create here a new empty page. And let's refresh our blog. And let's get back here. Yeah, so this is working. You just call the array method and you don't need to provide anything. And you get the output of the instance, which is here our array of post objects. Now let's give this also a try after our filter method and see what we get here. Refresh the page. We don't see anything on the browser, but here we can see now, which is now the same result as before after the map method, but that's just because our filter was not working correctly. So this means, again, we would go inside our post object, and here we would hopefully see the wrong field that we are working on. And then if we refresh the page, we should now see a new array just with those 4 post objects, and that's how we would want to do this. Again, as you can see, I can easily go directly to those array calls, which I think is really nice. And also here at the top, we can show all the files. So this means after debugging, I check here, okay, in which files do I have my array calls? And then I would just get rid of them. And yeah, that's also a nice way so that you don't forget about them. Also, what I think is pretty cool, we can keep multiple of our array calls. So for example, let's keep one after the map method, one after the filter method, and then maybe also inside our home controller, let's add one here for the posts. Now let's refresh the page. We now should see all of those just at once. And this way we can debug a little bit faster because we easily see, okay, now after the map method, we have those post objects. Then after the filter method, we have those 4 objects because we filtered out one of them. And this is our collection from the home controller. And yeah, I think this is pretty neat because we have this beautiful output here. We don't have anything on the browser, so we also could do this inside a production environment if it's important, if we don't find the bug locally. So this is something I really like. And again, I think this application is really beautiful and makes this really nice for debugging. Alright, so this was just a brief and very short introduction to Array. Of course, there's much more to discover. As I mentioned, it's available for Apple, Windows, and Linux. We have those different packages for Laravel, WordPress, and some other frameworks as well. You can debug via SSH, which is nice. You can use it for JavaScript and different programming languages as well. It works very well together with Laravel, for example, because of those specific packages. It provides some specific features just for this specific framework. So for example, in terms of Laravel, we can easily output Laravel models where we have some nice information. We can show queries, we can set breakpoints, which we can also do, which we see here. There's also a beautiful dark mode, so there is a lot to discover. So give this a look. I find it very useful. Here we also see a lot of those more methods that we can use. And I think it's something that you should give a try. Xdebug is a debugger and profiler tool for PHP. I'm pretty sure you have already heard of it, or maybe you tried it already yourself. You will see that debugging with Xdebug is quite different from the other approaches that we already have seen and covered. It's a beast and has definitely the most to provide for debugging your application. But like PHPStorm, feature-rich tools often come with a price. In case of Xdebug, a lot of developers have issues installing or setting it up correctly with an IDE, and I can relate to that. I have been there too a few times. But now I'm back using it on a daily basis and I already learned a ton about it. Let me show you what makes this tool so powerful and why you need to give it a try as well. With a few tips and tricks, installing and setting it up with PHPStorm will also become much easier. So let's do this together now. Let's start by installing Xdebug. So I'm here on my Apple M1 laptop and we're going to install it here now. And I know depending on your operation system and how you have installed and how you use PHP in your system, the installation and setup process of Xdebug can vary. So it can be a little different too from what I do. But still, it will give you all a good starting point. So first we're going to check if Xdebug is already installed, and as you can see here, it is not, because if it would have been installed, you would see it here in the output. So we're good to go to install it. Since I'm working on an ARM M1 Apple laptop, I need to install it with this ARM instruction. But usually what you just need is sudo packle install xdebug. Alright, so this was the installation. It seemed that everything was working successfully and the extension was already enabled for us in our php.ini file. So the next thing we would need to check if it was working. So let's check here again, and you can see already that xdebug is now enabled and that we can use it. And this is working by default because it already added something to our PHP.ini file. So let's give this a look. So with PHP.ini, we can see what configuration files for PHP are being used. And for me, I have PHP installed through Homebrew, so I'm using PHP 8. So this is my path and this is my ini file. So let's open this up, and as you can see here already, this line was added when we installed xdebug already, and that's why it's already working. Still, we do have a little issue here. So when I check again the PHP version, you can see that we have another extension installed called send up cache. And that's a problem because xdebug does not always work together nicely with upcache, especially if xdebug is being loaded before upcache. So we need to make sure that we load xdebug after this other extension. And okay, so let's see how this other extension is being loaded. So next to my main PHP settings file, I have here this conf.d folder, and here I have an extension file for the upcache. And this is where we're loading this other extension. So instead of loading xdebug through our main PHP settings file, where do we have it? No, it's not here. It's here. So let's get rid of this now. And now let's create a new file. And yeah, that's already. So we create another ini file just for xdebug. And now, because this starts with an X, it will be loaded after the upcache extension. So let's create it. Let's get into this file. Xdebug. Here we go. Now let's bring in our code to load this extension. And now let's try again. And now, yeah, you can see now the upcache is being loaded before xdebug, and this is the recommended way to do this. Believe it or not, this was already the hardest part. So as I mentioned, you may run into any issues with installing xdebug, so make sure to give some posts or videos a look if you run into any issues, but this is how it works on my machine. Now that xdebug is already installed, we need to set it up correctly. And there are a few things that we need to do, and we're starting by the xdebug settings. So again, we need to go to our PHP.ini file, and here currently we only have this one line here where we define that our xdebug extension is being loaded. So I have here the settings that I use on my machine. The first line is the same as before. We're going to load our PHP extension xdebug. Then the second line here, we're going to define the mode of xdebug. And this is new and came with xdebug version 3. So make sure if you use an older version, this might be different to you. And with this mode, we are setting that we only want some specific features to being loaded. So xdebug has a lot of more features than debugging for profiling or tracing your application, but we are currently only interested in debugging, and that's why we set the mode to debug. Then here I'm defining the host. I'm using the local host, so we could skip this because this is also the default value, but I like to keep it here. If you're using Homestead or Docker, this might be different, but in this video we're going to take a look at a simple example where you have your web server locally. Also, the port he defined is the default one, which is 9003, so we could skip this as well, but I also like to keep it in here. And on the last line, we have just a log file where we want Xdebug to log some information, some errors, which is nice for troubleshooting. So make sure you have this file created. And I just defined this file myself. So choose whatever file you want to get this information in. Okay, that's already it from the Xdebug configuration side. And as you can see, it's not that difficult. And this is now a lot easier than working with Xdebug 2. So, but still there is one thing missing. So we need to tell PHPStorm that we want to start a debugging session. And there are two ways we can do this. The first way would be to define start with request yes. So this means that with every request, we want to start a debugging session, which is nice if you use debugging all the time, but I like to define this myself. So that's why I get rid of this again. And I'm going to leave my ini for now. But what else we can do is we can use a browser extension. And on the documentation side, under debugging, you will find those browser applications. And these are little extensions for the main browsers, which we can use to enable or disable a debugging session. And let me get out here of my full screen mode here. And what I can do now here is I have already installed the one for my Brave browser, which is a Chrome browser. And here, if I click this extension, I can set some settings. And if I set this, with every request that I do, some information about this is being sent to the server. So here we have our demo application. If I click my extensions here, we can see that Xdebug helper here is enabled and it's green. So we are using the debug functionality. And what this does is whenever we hit a request, let's try this again now. We can see here in our cookie that inside a cookie, this Xdebug session variable was set, and this tells our web server that we want to start debugging with Xdebug. Okay, so this means now if we run any request, hit any site, we're going to add this cookie to our request so that the PHP server knows that we want to use Xdebug for a debugging session. But now Xdebug also needs to communicate with PHPStorm. So this is why we also need to set it up in PHPStorm itself. So let's get to our settings. I'm going to search for debug here. And I need this one here. So here we have set the debug port, which is 9000 and 9003. And the latter one is the one that we have set up for Xdebug. So this means PHPStorm is listening for this port as well, which is nice. There are some more settings, but we don't need them right now. So this means the only thing left now is we need to tell PHPStorm that we want to listen for debugging session. We can do this by this link here, start listening for PHP debug connections. Let's click it, nothing happens, but if we go to this again, you can see now that this link has now changed to stop. So this means whenever I want to start debugging something, I'm going to start listening for the debug connection. And this way PHPStorm will listen for this connection and for this information that comes from Xdebug. Okay, so we have set up Xdebug. We have set up our settings in the PHP ini file. We have this browser extension, which makes sure that we tell our web server that we want to start a debugging session. And in PHPStorm, we are listening on a specific port, which we have now enabled. So I think we're good to give this a try. So let's give this a try. I'm going to refresh the site. You can see that it is still loading here. So this means it seems to be working. Let's go to PHPStorm now. And you can see this prompt now that PHPStorm received an incoming connection request from Xdebug. So for my local scenario, I don't have to change anything here and I can just click accept. But just for your information, if you need Homestead or Docker, you need to map specific files to make sure that your application know which files are going to be used. For me, I can just click accept, and now our debugging session has been started, and we are stopping here at this file, which is a server.php file, which is from Laravel Valet, which I'm using for my local development. So this means every request for every local website, this script is being hit, and that's why it stops here. And this is because inside our debugging settings, we have this enabled: force break at first line when a script is outside of the project. So this is good for debugging, that you know which files are being hit outside of your application. So let's get rid of this, disable it, apply it. I'm going here to stop the debugging session. Let's get back to my site, and you can see now we have a 504 getaway timeout from our Nginx server, and this is just because the request was running very long. This is a little bit of an issue when working with Xdebug, but it's not too big of an issue. Okay, let's refresh our site again, and it seems now everything is working. We don't see anything yet, but this is good. Just to make sure that everything is really correctly set up, let's get back to our application here, to my controller, and I'm now going to set here a breakpoint. So this just means at this, when our script hits this line, we want it to stop. And if this works, we have set up Xdebug correctly. And as you can see, we directly get now, if I reload my page, to this line inside our script, and we already see some information about that. Okay, for us, this means we have set up Xdebug correctly, everything is working, and in the next videos, we're going to check out how to debug with Xdebug in detail. So this is where we left off in the last video. We have set this breakpoint here, which was successfully hit by PHPStorm and Xdebug, and now our script is being stopped here. Let's try this again. We're going to stop our debugging session. I'm going back to my site. Again, we have this 504 error, but we don't care. I'm going to refresh the site again, and I get directly back here to this line where I have set the breakpoint. Okay, similar to our other approaches, we now want to debug our little issue here where some of our blog articles are being shown, which we don't want to. Now we want to debug this situation with Xdebug. So we are already here at the breakpoint of this line, and we have some information here inside our variables tab, like the globals, server, environment variables, cookie, our instance, which is our controller here, but we don't have anything in here. So similar to our dump approaches, we would want to check out, okay, what is inside this posts variable. And at this breakpoint here, this line wasn't executed yet. So this means in order to see what we get from this side here, we need to make another step. And we can do this by using step over, which just means we're going to step to the next line of executable code here inside in this script, and this would be this view call here. And now that we're here, so as you can see, we're still inside our debugging session. We haven't set another breakpoint, but we just went over to this next step here. And now we have this posts variable inside our variables here, and we can now see, okay, this is a collection class, and here we have our items, and here we have those 5 blog articles of mine. So this is very similar to what we did before. We have here the output, and we're checking, okay, we have now 5 blog articles, so we don't see an error here, so we need to step a little bit deeper. So again, we want to check out what's happening inside our post controller. So inside here, I'm going to set now a new breakpoint so that we can check out if we get all the correct files in here. I'm going to refresh the page. We're going to stop again here at our first breakpoint. And now we say, okay, we want to resume our program. And now we should get to our second breakpoint, and we do. So here we're going to have our files which we load from a specific storage disk. And again, this line has not been executed yet. So this means we don't know yet what files is. So this means, again, we're going to use the step over feature here to go to the next line of executable code. And this is here in the collect method. And now inside our variables here for debugging, we can see that we now have this array of files, and all the files, all my blog articles are being loaded. Okay, nothing serious here. We don't see the issue yet. So again, we want to make sure what is happening in these two calls here. So first we're running the map method and then the filter method again. And as we did before, we want to make sure what happens after the map method and then after the filter method. So this is now a little bit trickier for Xdebug because these are chained methods. And you cannot easily say you want to stop here and here because it iterates over those arrays and it will be a little difficult to see what's happening here. But what we can do is something different. We can evaluate specific expressions here. So I'm going to select here the whole map method. And now I'm going to say I want to evaluate this expression. It gets now copied in here. Don't mind about the format. Just click evaluate and now we can see here the result of this method. And now we don't have the files anymore. We now have post objects. As you can see here, and now I could easily check out, okay, what's happening with those posts. And specific, I'm interested in this one because this should be hidden. But I see here that hidden is set to false. So I immediately know that there must be an issue here with setting up this post object. I can verify this by now selecting this whole expression and evaluate it again. Click here and now here we still have our 5 posts, but in our case we want to filter out the posts that are hidden. So we've made sure that this is not working here. Similar to our dump and die approaches that we already did. So this means I could now go into our post object and here I see now, okay, this is where the problem lies because we were checking for visibility inside our markdown files, but actually it is hidden the field that we are interested in. So this means let's keep our breakpoints. I'm going to refresh the page again. This is our first breakpoint. I don't care about it. Let's go to the second one here and let's step over so that we get to our collect method again. So in order to make sure that everything is working, I'm now going to evaluate this expression again. And if everything is correct, we should see now only 4 items, and we do. So this means one of the posts is now not shown here. And if I'm going to resume and go back to my browser, you can see that we now only see those 4 blog articles which we want to be shown here. Alright, so this was our first debugging session with Xdebug. And as you have surely seen, it's a little bit different from the other approaches that we have checked out in the videos before. So we have a lot of more features and options when it comes to debugging with Xdebug. So I'm pretty sure we need some more time to dig into all those features, and that's what we're going to do in the next videos. One advantage that I already want to mention here is that we didn't have to change any of our code in order to do debugging. So this means it's not going to happen that we forget about any dump and die statements inside our code. And this is already what I really like about Xdebug. But as I mentioned, there's much more we need to explore. I already mentioned that the second approach of debugging with Xdebug is called step debugging. And I'm sure you already guessed why it's called like this. Because we were using these buttons here for step over and step into. So yeah, we were stepping through our application. Still, I want to make this a little bit more clear because this is extremely powerful. Okay, let's stop our session here. I have here my breakpoint again where I get my posts. I'm going to refresh here my page and I get back here into this new debugging session here at this point. And now we can go from here through every step which the application, your code is taken in order to return this view. And there are a lot of steps. And this is what we can do now with using step into. So before we've been using mostly step over. So this would get to this next line here of executable code, this view call here. But now with step into, we're going into the next thing that happens. And think for yourself when we create a new post collector and then call the all method. So what would be the next thing which is happening inside the application? And I'm pretty sure you probably not guess what's happening here in my Laravel application, for example. So I've clicked now step into, and we are now inside the alias loader of Laravel. So what this means with every class that you create, you have some loaders which help you to provide you with the class that you want to use. And in Laravel, the first loader which is being called is the alias loader. And it has the name because here the second thing that's happening is where we check if the class that we currently that we want to use, which is our post controller. You can see it already here because PHPStorm is telling us what this variable here is, which is pretty nice, by the way. And Laravel has those alias classes, which are kind of shortcuts to some of the main classes that you can use in Laravel. But before this, there is another check, another condition here, which is for Laravel's real-time facades, which is also a nice cool feature of Laravel where you can create facades on the fly. But I don't want to get too much into detail about what these conditions are and why we need them, but I think it's interesting to see that this is the next step, what is happening inside the application. And then, okay, I can move on and let's say, what's the next step? Do I get into this if condition? No, I don't get here. Do I get into the second condition? Nope, I also don't get in here. And we are here now in another file. So here we are now inside the class loader, which is a class of Composer itself. Let me show this to you. Here we are. Here we have this class loader inside the Composer directory. And now Composer is helping us to find this class which we are looking for, which is the post collector. And again, we make another step into to see how we get this file. So as we can see, we're calling here this find file method, and we get now into this method, and here we are checking the class map, which is an array of all the files that we have in our application, and we see if the class that we're looking for is given here. And the next step here, you can see now we get into the condition. So this is already super cool because we really see the flow of our code, the flow of the application, and where we get with the next step. And now we're inside this condition, so this means we're returning here our class name, and as you can see, we already see this here as a string which comes through PHPStorm and Xdebug, which is pretty cool. And again, we move on. Next step into, now we're going to include the file since we have found this now. And then by including the file, we're just including the file. And as you can see here, the file is now the path to this class which we want to use, our post collector here. So this is the full class path. And now we just call this include method. And this is very similar to, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have done in the past too. So basically in the past, when we needed a specific class, we just included this class inside our code. And that's the same what's happening when we use Composer. But now Composer is taking care of providing us with the classes that we need to use, and this is auto-loading. And what I find so cool about this is with step debugging, you really can see how this is working. And let's move on here. So next, after including, we have some steps just at the end of our classes, like here and here. And then we're going to return true because we have found the class. And next, now we are inside this all method, which we were calling. So as you can see, there were a lot of steps happening in between us calling and creating a new instance and then calling the all method on this new instance. And then Laravel and the application and Composer is helping us to find this class, create this class, and then providing it back to us. And now again here we could do the same. Now we're using our storage facade here to get all files from a specific disk here. And again, we could check, okay, what's happening. Again, we're going to load a class. It's not a facade, it's not an alias. We move on. We're going to try to find this class here. And as you can see, this is now the Illuminate support facade storage class, and so on and so on. So I'm pretty sure you now have a much better understanding of what step debugging means and how powerful it is. So you can use it for exploring more of a specific application, a package, or just check how a framework like Laravel or Symfony is working itself. Just set a breakpoint at the start and then go step by step through the next line of code which is being triggered, and this will tell you much more about how specific things are working and what is the flow that the request is going to take. And as well, it's just super powerful for debugging because it shows you what are the parts of your application that are being triggered, or maybe what are the parts which are not being triggered and what you needed to check out. So this will give you a good overview and understanding of how your application works, and this will help you find bugs much faster. So now that you know what step debugging means, give it a try in your next application, set a breakpoint, and just take a look at the next 10 or 15 steps of what is happening inside your application. I'm pretty sure you will love it as well. We have been already working with breakpoints, but there is a lot more we need to talk about them. So let's start first with the shortcut to set and remove a breakpoint. So there is one shortcut here to toggle a breakpoint. So this means we don't need to use the mouse. If we're already on a line, we can use the shortcut. And as you know me already, I try to use all the shortcuts possible because you will be much faster. Okay, so what's next? If we have a breakpoint set, we can see some details here with the right mouse click, for example, and then we can disable them. And here you can see that the icon is changing, and we can also define if we want to suspend the execution. And this just means if we want to stop the breakpoint here or not. But usually we just want to stop it because that's why we set a breakpoint in the first place. As you can see here already, if we do not suspend our execution, we can do something more. For example, we can log specific values to our log files. So maybe you don't want to stop at the breakpoint, but just want to log something. So this is working as well, but mostly I see myself just suspending the execution and stop at my breakpoints when I use them. Then we also have here a more button where we get to the breakpoints settings. So this gives you an overview of all the breakpoints which you have set. And here you again have the same features to enable and disable like we've done before. Again, also for seeing all breakpoints, there is a shortcut as well, which I highly recommend. So this is extremely useful if you have a lot of breakpoint sets. And then here you have a nice overview to enable and disable them, and you can also easily delete them and just get rid of them if you want to. Okay, so before I've shown you about setting the breakpoint with a shortcut, but then using the right click to go to its settings, but you can also do this with a shortcut as well. So if you have a breakpoint set and you use the so-called context actions, you now also have the abilities to remove a breakpoint, disable a breakpoint, or edit it, and then you would get to the same dialog. So again, use the shortcut if you want to do this because you will be much faster. Okay, next, since we're already here, we have a condition. So this means we can set a condition, and only under this condition, this breakpoint is being hit or not. Okay, let's get back here and let's think about a good way where we can test this out. So back here in my post collector, and let's set here a breakpoint at this line. And again, I'm using the context action to edit the breakpoint, and now I'm going to set the condition here. And in this case, we are looping all over our files here. And I only want to stop if we're going to have a post where the hidden field is true. So what I can do now here is I have access to the variables inside the code as well. So post matter. And here I can call the matter method to call the field hidden, which we can access through the markdown file. And now I say I only want to hit this breakpoint if hidden is true. Like this. And as you can see, we have auto-completion, which is super nice here in order to set these conditions here. And as you can see now, our breakpoint here has also changed. We now have this little question mark here showing that we have here a condition. Okay, let's get back to our browser. Let's refresh the page. And as you can see, we are stopping here at our breakpoint. And as you can see, we are not stopping at the first file. We are stopping at the last file here, which is the post path for the last article that I have in my list. And here under post matter, you can see now that hidden is true. So this means we're running through the collection and through the loop for all the other files, but it only stopped here for this one. And this is really powerful because I'm pretty sure you are like me, and when you have to debug some loops here, you often end up in a situation where you only want to stop for a specific file in the loop. And then you would have done maybe something like this: if post matter hidden. If this is given, if it's true, we can also write it like this, and then we will dump something out. So that's what I have done before. But now with this condition inside my breakpoints, this is of course much better because I don't have to write anything inside the code. And let's get rid of this breakpoint again. So again, if you want to set a breakpoint, be aware that you can set a condition and you only want to start and hit this breakpoint because of this condition of yours, which makes debugging much better for you, of course. Okay, then besides setting breakpoints here in the code like this, we can also set breakpoints through the breakpoints dialog. So why would this be useful? So we can add a new one and we can set one for an exception and one for a method. And let me show you why this is pretty cool. So first I'm going to define a class. In our case, it's the post collector, again with auto-completion. So this is pretty easy. And the method name is all. So this means I want to stop every time this all method is being called. Okay, let's click OK. And let's say we are done here. And you can see now here, or you should see it, at the method. Okay, we don't see it yet. Let's stop here and let's refresh the page first. Okay, now we see it. So we are now here at our all method. So you can see that this breakpoint was being triggered. And we now have this different icon here because this is now a method breakpoint that stops every time this method is being called. And yeah, this is pretty helpful if you just want to make sure if a specific method is being called or not, and you're not interested in setting a specific breakpoint at a specific line, and you're most interested in if this method was being called or not, then you can easily set a breakpoint for a method. And again, inside our breakpoint dialog here, we can remove it again if we don't need it anymore. Okay, and I'm pretty sure you have also seen this here. We have two other options, JavaScript exception breakpoint, which I'm not going to talk about here, but I also want to talk about the PHP exception breakpoint. So this means I can set a breakpoint if a specific exception is being hit. So let's go with a simple exception, the error exception, which is thrown pretty intensely. Let's add this breakpoint here. Okay, done. And now inside this file get content method, let's just remove this mid. This is not given. Not given, like this. And Let's give this a try now as well, and we should see now. Yeah, so we are stopping here. Let me show you where we are currently. We are inside the handle exception class, inside Laravel's foundation directory. And here this error exception was being thrown because of the file path that we have wrong here. And as you can see here, this is the file where the exception was being thrown, which is our post collector. And we have a level, we have a line, and we also see the message file get content failed to open stream. So this is also useful if you just want to look for specific exceptions. You want to stop them before they are being thrown and see why those things are happening. So that's also pretty cool if you want to debug more on exception base and not on specific breakpoints that you set yourself. So these were the most important things that I wanted to show you about breakpoints. Again, make sure to use the shortcuts to toggle breakpoints, to break in this dialog, to show you which breakpoints you have set, to edit them, and to get a nice overview. And also make sure you don't forget that you can set breakpoints for exceptions and for methods as well, which is pretty useful. And my favorite feature is, again, if we can set a condition for a breakpoint like we've done here before, which is just super cool and makes debugging so much better. We already learned that if we set a specific breakpoint like here and then refresh the page, we have here at this point some information about the current state of our application, and we have some information like here in form of variables. So for example, we have here our post, our instance itself, which is the post collector, and this already helps you while debugging. But then often you need to know about specific values to get some more information about how your application is behaving. So for example, in case of our post, we might need the hidden field or the title field. And we want to immediately see what this field holds. And there's a nice way in PHPStorm how we can do this. And those things are called watches. So let's right click it, edit to watches. So this means we want to watch this specific value. And as you can see already, we have now this new kind of variable here at the top of our variables holding the post title. And if I now go step over and now we're going to loop through the other values, we can immediately see without having our posts open what is the title of the current post. And this helps you, of course, a lot while you are debugging, because now you can see, okay, this was the title which I was looking for, or this is this post. And this helps you for solving specific issues. So that's how you can add those called washes to your variables. And you can, at specific points, directly see what those values are holding for you. But besides that, there are also so-called inline watches. And inline watches is very similar to what you see when we have a breakpoint, like here, for example. Let's hit this again. You can see we have those kind of inline values showing us what this variable holds. And there's something very similar that we can set ourselves. So I'm now going to set a new breakpoint here at the first line where we get our files and make a collection of them. Let's restart our session here. And by the way, let's get rid of this watch here because we don't need this one anymore. But now I want to add a new inline watch. And besides add to watches, we have this here, add inline watch. And now what I want to do is, I don't want to watch the variable itself, but I want to watch how many files we have. In this example, we already see it here, but we can also easily change this value. So for example, I'm now not interested in the files itself, but maybe just only in the count. So let's change this, and now you can easily see we were running this count method on the files and the result is 5. So every time we're going to debug this part of our application, we can immediately see, okay, we have here 5 files. And that's a nice way. Instead of having these variables here, we still have this here under the inline watches, but we also have it directly inside our code. And this can also help you a lot while debugging through longer loops and longer parts of your code, where you easily want to spit out these little information details that will help you to find the specific issues.